it is time for my April mid-month wrap-up. That is to say, all of the books that I read during the first part of the month. So stick around to see what I've been up to. Well, hey friends, for those of you new around here, my name is Roger and welcome to my channel, Roger's Reads. So today I'm doing my April wrap-up of part 1, which I always do in the middle of the month, outlining all the books that I've read thus far, and then I'll do the second part, usually the last day of the month or the beginning of the next month. So this month, the first book that I read was entitled Keep Going, and this is written by Clare. I've read his other two books, I have them here actually, Steal Like an Artist, which I really liked, and Show Your Work. And both of these offer advice on how to unlock your creativity and get your work out into the world. So in this book, Keep Going, this is aimed at writers, artists, and creatives of all types. And the author offers tips, tricks, and techniques on how to stay creative during good times and bad. So this is just a short little book, but it is an inspirational one and contains an incredible amount of wisdom and depth in its pages. So the book is peppered with relevant quotes, humor, chuckle-worthy illustrations, blackout poetry, advice from other creatives, inspiring stories. All that made me get excited all over again about the projects that I'm currently working on and those that I hope to begin in the future. But more than that, this is also a practical book on how to live a good and satisfying life despite the chaos that sometimes surrounds us. So though it's a fast read, I think I read it through the first time in less than 2 hours. This isn't the kind of book that you place back on your shelf when you're finished with it and forget about it. Like his other books, you want to have it close at hand so you can refer back to it often. I actually now have it on my desk with the other two books, and I have little doubt that I'll be returning back to this one quite often as well. I think that this would be an excellent motivating book for those times in your life where you're going through rough patches, those times when success seems so far out of your reach, or when you're just feeling kind of lost or jaded. You know, this might be the kind of book to pull you out of a slump. So all in all, I think that Keep Going is a timeless book, both from the heart and for the heart, and I highly recommend it. So the next book that I read this month was entitled Normal People by Rooney. I actually read an advanced reader copy of this from NetGalley, so I don't have a physical copy, but I will put the book cover up here. So I've been hearing so much about this book that I finally had to pick it up. So the story follows two young people, Connell and Marianne, from their adolescence to their adulthood. So they first meet in high school, and they're basically from two different worlds. Connell is popular and well-liked, where Marianne is the outcast. She's kind of like the weird girl that nobody talks to. So they end up forming a relationship outside of school, but because of Connell's popularity and his dread of damaging his reputation by hanging out with the weird girl, they keep the relationship a secret. So then the two head off to university in Dublin, and the tables here kind of turn. Marianne is now the popular one, though she has some major inner demons she's battling, and it's Connell who's feeling lost and is having a difficult time fitting in. So though the dynamic shifts between them, the connection keeps them drifting back to each other regardless of the circumstances that come their way. It's almost kind of like they both get the other like nobody else does. So both Connell and Marianne are both extremely flawed and wounded characters, with Marianne feeling unworthy of being loved and unable to be in a relationship in which she isn't abused or mistreated. And then there's Connell, who suffers from crippling depression. So this actually turned out to be really an excellent story about friendship and love. Now, I'm not saying that this is a romance story because it is not that. However, it is a love story and quite a complex one at that. So I've heard people call this a story for millennials, but you know, I think I'd have to respectfully disagree. While it does follow two millennials in their 20s, their feelings and experiences were not so much different than my own experiences decades ago, and sometimes still. And I was surprised how much the story resonated with me. You know, I could relate to so much of what these characters experienced and went through. The insecurities, the doubt, the self-involvement, the emotional pain, the feelings of being lost that so many of us experience when we first enter into adulthood, no matter what the era or time period. So I don't believe that this is strictly a story about and relevant to only millennials, but rather it deals with the same things that many young people experience regardless of the time period, like I said. But all in all, I ended up thoroughly enjoying this book. O'Connell and Marianne were fascinating, broken, and utterly complex individuals, and you know, I really enjoyed getting to know them throughout the pages of the book. I Thought the Normal People is a beautifully rendered, insightful novel about love and friendship and all those things that go along with them. And I'm actually going to be posting a full-on review of this book on this channel, so if you'd like to know more, stay tuned. So the next book on my list is entitled Down Among the Sticks and Bones, written by Seanan and McGuire. So this is officially the second book in the Wayward Children series. It's listed as book 2, with Every Heart a Doorway being the first book in this series. And actually, everyone told me to read Every Heart a Doorway first, so I did. But you know, I actually recommend reading this book first and then reading Every Heart a Doorway, as this book, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, is actually a prequel to the first book. So I ended up reading the first book first, book 1, Every Heart a Doorway. But it ended up spoiling pretty much everything in this story. And because of that, there were no real surprises left, though it was fun seeing how it all came about and getting more into the story. Now that being said, I really loved Down Among the Sticks and Bones. So this follows two twin sisters, Jack and Jill, or Jillian and Jacqueline, whom we're introduced to in the first book. But the events in this story take place before the girls end up at Eleanor West's home for wayward children. So growing up at home, the girls are forced into strict roles by their neglectful and pretty much abusive parents, with Jack being forced to take on the role of the ladylike princess who wears pink, and Jill the role of the short-haired adventuresome tomboy. So one day the girls discover a hidden staircase in a trunk and follow it down to an entirely different world called the Moors, a world of necromancers, mad scientists, and vampires. So this is kind of a creepy, eerie, dark fairy tale that explores gender roles and sometimes the harmful expectations of parents or others in general. So I don't want to say too much more about this, given that it's just a short novella. I think, what is it, about 180 pages or so? 187 pages. But I will say that I have come to love this series, and I thought that this book was fun, fantastical, and enchanting. You know, I really love the dreamy storytelling and the eerie setting in the book, and enjoyed the numerous themes in the story, such as being relegated and forced into specific roles by others, and the importance of loving someone for what they are, not for who we want them to be. There were several other compelling themes as well, but I'll let you discover those for yourself. But yeah, really enjoyed this second book in the Wayward Children series by Seanan and McGuire. So that brings me on to the next book in the series, Beneath the Sugar Sky, Book 3 of the Wayward Children series by Seanan and McGuire. So the reason I started this series in the first place was because this particular book is nominated for the BookTube SFF Awards, Science Fiction and Fantasy Awards, and I'm so happy that I ended up discovering this series because of it. So in this book, we return back to Eleanor's home for wayward children to the point where a new character, Rooney, literally falls from the sky. And we learned right off the bat that Sumi, a character that we were introduced to in the first book, Book 1, is Rooney's mother. Though in the world where Rooney lands, Rooney hasn't actually been conceived yet. But given that many of the worlds that the children spend time in are nonsense worlds, this shouldn't be surprising. So now Rooney needs to help save her world. So she enlists the help of a couple of the school's children, including a new character named Cora. And they all slip off to the world of confection, a world which is made entirely out of sweeties. But things don't end up to be all cake and candy for our crew, as there is real danger there, especially when they encounter the ruthless Queen of Cakes. Oh, and also did I mention that there's mermaids in this story as well. So I ended up really enjoying this one as much as I did the first two. And you know, for such short books, they really pack a punch. I also enjoyed seeing some of my favorite characters from the first book, as well as meeting a few new characters in this story. I especially enjoyed how this book dealt with themes of disabilities, as well as stereotypes and the treatment of plus-sized people. So again, I can't talk too much about the story, given that it's such a short book, lest I ruin any of the magic of it for those of you who want to read it. Let me just say that McGuire has really hooked me into this world of hers, and I'll definitely be picking up the next book in the series, which I do believe is already out. So the next book that I read this month thus far was a book entitled Midnight at the Tuscany Hotel, written by James Markert. So I was offered to read an advanced reader copy of this by NetGalley, and I was really excited about it once I read the synopsis. Now, I'm not typically one for historical fiction novels, though history wasn't really the central theme of this book. What caught my attention about it was the magical realism aspect of it, with a touch of Greek mythology thrown in. So the story follows a man named Vittorio Grandi, a World War II veteran who has just returned from the war with severe PTSD. Now, Vittorio has photographic memory, and now he can't erase the heinous and disturbing war atrocities from his mind that he witnessed during his time in the war. And now that he's back home, both his wife and his young son are frightened of him due to his erratic and sometimes violent behavior. Now, to add to his stress level, he discovers that during his time at war, the mind of his father, Robert Gandhi, has been taken over by Alzheimer's, and he now no longer even recognizes Vittorio. So, his father, Robert, used to run the renowned Tuscany Hotel, which was once a place where artists of all kinds would find inspiration. But now the hotel has been closed down for quite a few years following a tragic event in Robert's life. So back to the present. One night, Robert disappears, and Vittorio guesses that the only place his father could have gone, that the only place that his father might remember, would be the hotel. So, sure enough, Vittorio finds his father at the hotel. But something has drastically changed. Robert is now completely lucid. His mind is sharp and sound. His memories are intact. Robert claims that it was the water from the fountain at the hotel that restored him. So Victoria then learns that Robert already has decided to reopen the hotel and has already invited others suffering from memory loss due to Alzheimer's dementia to come to the hotel. So before long, word gets out that drinking from the fountain at the Tuscany Hotel can restore the memories of people suffering from memory loss. And the hotel once again fills up. But not with creative types, but rather this time with mostly elderly people who once again have the ability to regain control over their memories and their lives. But Robert begins to suspect that drinking from that fountain comes at a severe price. So I thought this book was absolutely terrific. This is such a beautiful story about artists and their muses, about memories lost, memories found again, and the truths behind certain myths and legends. This was such a unique premise, and one that hits you right in the heart. I thought it was so interesting how the author incorporated Greek mythology into the story and how all the mythology details worked seamlessly into the action of the plot. So all in all, I thought Midnight at the Tuscany Hotel was a beautifully crafted and smartly written, character-driven novel with a touch of magic thrown in. I would definitely read more books by this author, and I know that he has written a couple of other novels before this one, which I think I will check out. I will also be uploading a full-on review of this book on the channel, so if you'd like to learn more, keep your eyes peeled. I'll try to get it up this week if possible. So the last book that I read thus far in April is entitled The Bane Chronicles. This is written by Cassandra, Clare, Sarah, Rees, Brennan, and Maureen Johnson. So I've been wanting to get to this book for a while now, but since I just received Cassandra Clare's latest book in the mail, which is the Red Scrolls of Magic, the first book in the Eldest Curses series, which is a brand new series featuring Magnus Bane and Alec Lightwood, I figured it was finally time for me to get to this one. I'm not sure why I haven't picked this up sooner, given that the illustrious and immortal Magnus Bane is probably my favorite character in the Shadowhunter world. So this book is a collection of 11 stories, each one about 50 pages long, that focuses on a specific time in Magnus Bane's life. The first being in the 1700s, I do believe, all the way up to the present day. So in these snippets, we get backstories on several characters in the Shadowhunter books, including the Herondales, the Lightwoods, Camille, Ragnar Fell, Tessa, and I especially enjoyed the story on how Rafael Santiago became a vampire. You know, it was enjoyable seeing how all the events and the people in these stories have shaped Magnus into the person he is in the present day. So I thought that each story in this book was compelling in its own right, and though they all blended together seamlessly, so much so that it was difficult to believe that the collection was a collaboration by 3 different authors. One thing I will say, though, is I wish I had read the Infernal Devices series before this, as I do believe some of the earlier characters, such as Edmund and James Herondale, introduced in these stories, also played a part in those books. Though these stories and those characters were still engaging regardless. But it does make me want to delve into that series sooner rather than later. But yeah, I really ended up enjoying the Bane Chronicles, and as I mentioned, I love Magnus Bane, so this was a lot of fun. So those are all the books that I've read thus far this month. Now I think my goal is to read 12 or 13, so given that I'm halfway through the month and I've read 6 of them, I seem to be right on course. So yeah, keep an eye out for part 2 of this video towards the end of the month. And I think that does it for my April mid-month wrap-up. As always, I thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of your support. And if you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you click the like button below. And subscribe if you haven't by clicking the subscribe icon and the bell icon. And that about does it. I'll talk to you all in the next video. Roger and out.